Welcome back to the House of Kayfabe. I am the other Steve, and I am here with the great Steve, the one who is so great his home state named a river after him, the trial chief, Stephen P. New. Today's video is going to involve me trying to get you to say more than you're allowed to say, because I have been through this journey with you from night one of what we're going to talk about today. And you've been outed. You have been living in the shadows as the concierge of these two great men, and you've been outed. And now, finally, after over a year, we can talk about Stephen P. New being the lawyer, one of the attorneys for CM Punk and Ace Steel. And your relationship with them started how many days after the brawl out?
About 2 months. About 2 months. And representing someone else who shall remain unnamed, that started the day after brawl out. And then a couple months later, CM Punk got my phone number, texted me, and was just able from that point forward, and Punk had a legal team already, Ace Steel not so much. And, we talked about different things, and just want to tell you, I'm greatly limited what I can say, just like Ace was on another podcast recently. What I would like to say, though, Steve, is that from all of that, those two are two of the most stand-up, greatest guys that I've ever known, particularly around the pro wrestling industry, which can get a little carny at times. Both those guys are straight shooters. Both those guys are honest to a fault. And, both those guys are loyal, fiercely loyal to one another and the people within their camp. And it became readily apparent that we were going to be good friends, that, I could provide an outsider's perspective on what they had to deal with and some legal expertise as someone who's had this connection to the pro wrestling business, both as a fan. I understand the stuff. I know who the personalities are, and from representing some other folks, I had some information that hadn't been previously known, let's say.
I was about to ask that, and I think you answered it. I know why they called you, because you are the one legitimate wrestling lawyer, no gimmicks required. And did it seem like they trusted you more because, hey, what do you call a dead lawyer at the end of at the bottom of a lake? Good start. You're not famous for being the most trustworthy people. Do you think that it helped that they knew that you're just a straight mark?
I think it helped, and we would have those wrestling conversations. Now, I don't know whether they were testing me, or I don't know whether they were testing Corny's theories or what exactly, but they wanted to see, look, is this guy who just, is some casual fan. But the funny thing was, if you recall, we went to AEW in Charleston, West Virginia, and we heard the second pipe bomb where Punk called out Hangman Adam Page. And you looked over at me and you're like, woof, that's going to reverberate. Yeah. Interestingly, the next morning, and I'm messaging you guys in our group, I was on the plane with all those guys. I'm at Charleston. Right. I'm at the Charleston airport, and Punk's there. Dustin Rhodes is there. Omega's, everybody. Tony Storm is there. Everybody is there. from the AEW show the night before. Interestingly, I almost asked Jack Perry at the Marriott that morning whether he needed a ride to the airport because he was standing outside waiting for his Uber to pick him up. And then we both get to Jaeger at the same time. And I see Punk in the airport the next morning. He's going to a Starbucks. We're in DC. That's where the connection was for everybody to go home. And I was going, I think, Charleston to DC to maybe to New York or to New Orleans somewhere for work. And that's what it's like trying to fly out of West Virginia, folks. You got to go from Charleston, West Virginia to DC to get a connection to somewhere.
Unless you're going to Florida.
Yeah, yes. And so it was real interesting, that I saw him there that day, which would end up just being days before the brawl out situation. And then I get connected with him and Ace. And I'm real limited, Steve, what I can talk about. But I think Ace said it best, though. My job in the months that followed brawl out, up through the returns and everything like that, was to just look out for their best interest. And I'll always do that. I really can't say a whole lot else. I really wish for the people that watch this show, I'm not going to breach any privileges to my clients, first and foremost. I take that very seriously. And number two, they're subject, I'm subject to NDAs and confidentiality agreements, things like that. So none of the particulars I can get into. What I can tell you is that CM Punk and Ace Steel are the most stand-up guys that I've ever dealt with in this business.
Now, when we talk in our real life and we talk about all manner of subjects, I always say that, Steve, you're too goddamn emotional. But as you say all the time, my emotion is my superpower when it comes to working with my clients. Now, I know how emotional you get when it comes to just trying to make the person who has been wronged whole. I have seen, now knowing you for 3 years, I've seen what you will go through. You will fly to New Orleans, and then you will go to Orlando, and you'll show up in New York the next day to follow the leads that you need to make the case happen. And I see that passion, this had to be like double passion, because you are coming from it not just as a lawyer trying to, make the best happen for your clients. You're also a wrestling fan. And you also, if you go back in through the history of House of Kayfabe, and if you are listening, please give us a like, comment, and share, and go check out a bunch of our old content. There is some evergreen stuff back there. And you will hear Stephen New's opinions on the other participants in the brawl out and what later happened at Wembley. So you will know where Steve New is coming from. So in this case, you have the passion of trying to find justice for your clients, and also the passion of a wrestling fan, of a lifelong, decades-long wrestling fan, also getting to go in and, how would I put it? You are against wrestlers you don't like.
I would like to think that I wouldn't completely mark out, and if it had ever gotten to litigation, I would have been as respectful as I could be, because sitting across from somebody in a deposition or something like that, using their real names and so on and so forth, is a whole lot different than watching a match. By the way, Charleston, West Virginia AEW was also the return of one Kenny Omega that night. And we heard when he compared us to cat poop, cat litter.
What was that?
I have to this day, I don't know what the man was talking about. But yes, being a wrestling fan,
going against wrestlers you don't like.
Yes, it's just a little, it's odd, but it's also a little bit easier to think my client's a good guy. My client's a baby face. I'm the baby face manager here. I'm Paul Ellering managing the baby face Road Warriors.
It's like that.
Against the Freebirds or something. I mean.
So in your deposition, would you have like took a real left turn and just been like, Balding Buck, whatever your real fucking name is, would you have said, Balding Buck, can you tell me how many super kicks is too many for a wrestling match?
No, because just as sure as I used one of Corny's catchphrases or this at the beginning of the Omega deposition, they'd try to challenge my law license, and none of those guys are worth my law license. So no, I wouldn't have done this at the start of the deposition, Steve.
No jazz hands at Kenny Omega?
No.
So, in a previous video, actually the one right before this, and actually it might be the one after this, I think we may have to release this one first. You talk about dealing with the WWE law team in reference to the Yeet movement and the Yeet copyright, situation between Jay Uso and your client, Huff Manley, Casey Huffman. What was it like dealing with the AEW lawyers?
It got better with time. I will say this. It got better with time because at first.
Because wait, let me stop you there. In that video, you talk about how professional and how much of a pleasure it was to deal with the WWE law term, in pursuant, of trying to resolve the Yeet copyright.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
now
when AEW started, Cornette was calling Orange Cassidy my little dog Pockets. Cornette was calling Joey Janela Jelly, and was otherwise just taking a crap all over AEW. I don't think that set well with the people at AEW, including the legal team. And so when situations arose, and we had many where I had to deal with AEW's legal team, I think, they thought that I was an extension of Cornette. Or
I was about to say, did they treat you like you were an avatar of Jim Cornette?
Yes, they treated me at first like I was an avatar of Jim Cornette, particularly where Janela was concerned, because Janela would say,
but did you call him Jelly in any of the talks, Steve?
At one time, I may have referred to, and then I was quickly, chastened. I was chastised and told, "Hey, we don't body shame in AEW, Mr. New. That's beneath you as a lawyer." Okay.
Obviously, not knowing what lawyers are, there's nothing beneath a lawyer. What are you talking about?
Right. Calling someone jelly's the least of what I hear in any given day. So, anyway, after a little bit of a rocky start, the longer my relationship with their legal team went, the better it got, actually. And, so, we've worked together well for a long time now. I feel like they take me more seriously as an attorney than they did at first, realizing, look, I'm not an avatar of Jim Cornette. I'm not Jimmy. I don't share all of Jimmy's opinions about everything. He's the legend, though. Understand. He's on the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling managers. I'm a lowly lawyer from Gilbert, West Virginia.
You're just a small town bird lawyer.
I'm just a small town bird lawyer, yes, with Cornette being the biggest bird that I represent. So, yes. But the relationship improved tremendously the longer it went on. And I think that was because as I treated them with respect, they treated me with respect, even when we were in some, really hairy, really dicey situations there.
Well, let's see if I can get this out of you. We know that you were there, phone call for the brawl out. And I know that you were there for the negotiations of bringing back CM Punk and bringing back Ace Steel. And if you're not a dirt sheet reader, good on you. But if you are, you know that Ace Steel was brought back, but he was brought back to AEW as a producer and a coach, but he was not allowed to come to the buildings. And he did his work on Zoom calls like we are right now. And it seemed like you were done. Your job was finished. You had helped CM Punk mend what needed to be mended, and you helped Ace Steel mend what needed to be mended with AEW. And you thought, we're done. And you could go on and, represent Francine and the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express and Adam Pearce and everyone else that you represent in the music business, in the wrestling business that we love. Then fast forward to Wembley Stadium. Now, once CM Punk came back, Collision happened. Had you kind of stepped away as a outside counsel? Did you keep in contact? And if not, were you then contacted again after Wembley happened?
The relationship remained. It was an ongoing relationship. And that's about all I'm comfortable saying. Is just that it was an ongoing relationship, so that they had me at their disposal whenever they needed.
If I'm doing my job right, you're going to make those kind of answers. I'm trying to get as much out of you as I can. So when Wembley happened, were you waiting to get the phone call?
Of course. I mean, that was, it's no different with that situation than anything else. I'll always be a phone call away for those guys.
Okay.
No matter what, no matter where, no matter what, I'm a phone call away.
Now, can you tell us? Now, of course, this has turned into a fantastic advertisement for New and Associates law firm. Is it New and Taylor? I got to get it right. Right? It's New and Taylor.
No, it's Stephen New and Associates. Taylor's practicing law with her husband.
Okay. So, trying to get a little bit more out of you. Were you involved in the dissolution of the working relationship between CM Punk and Ace Steel after Wembley?
Ace more so than Punk's.
Okay. See, I heard that if you just let someone, if you let silence stay there, the person you ask a question to will eventually want to break the silence and say more.
Yeah, except the guy that does this just about every day for a living. Yeah.
Damn it. So it doesn't work.
It does most people. It works on the untrained. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
So, this was us getting this off our chest. I've kind of been the concierge to Stephen P. New for the last over a year and a half because you didn't have anyone that you could talk to. Your wife doesn't give a shit. And you knew that you could trust me. And I have felt like a burden of knowing all of these things. And there is so much more that we could talk about, and we just can't, because we respect CM Punk and Ace Steel so much that we're not going to air any of the dirty laundry. I can tell you, as I don't know that much about Ace Steel, but if he trained CM Punk, he's cool with me. I'm a gigantic CM Punk fan. Again, go back to our older content and you'll hear me talk ad nauseum that I think he's like one of the top 20 wrestlers of all time, on the mic, behind the commentary, in that ring. I am so glad that my good buddy Stephen P. New was able to be a positive force behind CM Punk and Ace Steel. So wrap us up, Steve. What's this all been like? And now you're outed because Ace Steel said your name on the Rip Rogers podcast, which I didn't know he had a podcast. And boy, should, if anyone should, it should be Rip Rogers.
Daggone right.
Man, I remember him getting beat and getting over Like Rip Rogers was a fucking genius. I've
Yes.
seen him so many times get beat. He was like George South in the sense that he was a jobber, but you knew who he was. You know what I mean?
And he hadn't always been. I mean, Rip's had had great runs in different territories.
So I would have seen him when he came to NWA.
You would have
605.
seen him in the NWA WCW days.
Mhm.
Late 80s, early 90s. If you back up 8-10 years before that, man, Rip was over, and he's always been jacked. I remember that he and Randy Savage got into a bodybuilding contest, a pose down contest in ICW back in the day, about 81 or 82, I guess. And I'm looking forward to talking to Rip here in a couple of weeks on his podcast. But I mean, to kind of take us home here, Ace Steel is a legitimate sweetheart, just the greatest guy, and his love for this business knows no bounds. He worked with Harley Race in Harley's latter years, and it's guys like that that he holds in the highest esteem. Dusty Rhodes, on Rip's podcast, Ace is talking about doing a Dusty Rhodes impression promo in front of Dusty in Ring of Honor. I mean, and you just hear it in Ace's voice. What a mark he's marking out. I can't imagine. I met Dusty 2 or 3 times, and I completely marked out and wanted to pee down my leg just meeting Dusty. I couldn't imagine performing in a ring in front of the great American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. All I can tell you is Ace Steel and CM Punk are real. They're the realest of the real. You never have to guess what's on their minds. They're going to tell you what's on their minds. And, my grandma Lucille had a saying, plain talk is easily understood. That was one of her favorite sayings. Plain talk is easily understood. And that's how I feel every time I talk with Ace Steel or CM Punk. Plain spoken, get to the point, don't have to guess what they're thinking or anything like that. And that's why I'll always just be a phone call away for those guys.
In a world of double speak and bullshit, we could use a lot more men just like that. And we could use a lot more men just like Stephen P. New. Thank you all for watching. Again, if you all liked all that, give us a like, a comment, and share. Tell your buddies about us. We're trying to build a brand around here. For Stephen P. New and for the rest of the residents of House of Kayfabe, we'll see you next time.